Greetings, folks. Iolair here. Today's replay is courtesy of a returning guest and our colleague from the Southeast Asia server, Shari 1966. I'll leave links to Shari's other replays that have been featured on the channel in the description below. Now for today's match, Shari is sailing for us the premium Tier 8 Royal Navy heavy cruiser HMS Cheshire in a Tier 9 domination match here on Land of Fire. Shari's Cheshire is commanded by none other than the mighty Jingles, and he is running a really classic and solid heavy cruiser build. Now, I should note that when I first captured this replay, I used the standard national voiceover settings, which meant listening to the default British commander voiceover. And while there's obviously nothing wrong with the default voiceover, we clearly needed to hear the voice of the mighty Jingles, so I did recapture the replay. Now, today's match is going to highlight what I think is a fairly uncommon situation where random allies who are not in a division actually coordinate well in a battle, and this will be pretty clear and evident when it does happen. Now, I've started the replay a few minutes into the battle because the allies got overrun on the west flank over by Alpha, and that's where Shari did spawn, but being the good cruiser commander that he is, he knew well enough to back off. In fact, one of the Tier 9, Allied Tier 9 battleships, the Friedrich der Große, which passed Shari at the beginning of the video, was basically full health, and he just sailed solo into the jaws of the opponent's strong flank, got himself focused out and torped out by a Fletcher at this point that we've never seen. He doesn't even show up as anywhere having been detected on the minimap. So things have not started off very well here. In fact, the Allies didn't even have Charlie until fairly recently, and again with the two-ship deficit in combination means that their point deficit is pretty steep right now. There's another exchange, of ships that's in the south of Bravo between the loss of the Allied Hood and the sinking of the opposing Jean Bar. So each team has lost one of its top-tier battleships. And Shari is looking to move south here to group up with the Benham and the Buffalo here at Bravo and try to make a stand. Now, they do need their Musashi to move over to Bravo as well so that he can start drawing the fire and start using his power in his gunfire to be able to put some pressure on opponents. Now here is that Fletcher that I previously mentioned that up to this point we had never detected. He is pushing into the south side of Bravo here, putting himself into a crossfire between the Benham, Shari here in the Cheshire, and the Buffalo. Up to this point, I'm not sure why the Fletcher was making such an aggressive move when previously he clearly was doing very well over at Alpha, but he does take a torpedo from the Benham. His engine has been knocked out. He is flooding. That was kind of a disappointing salvo from Shari. Those shells looked like they fell a little short, but fortunately they are able to take down the last of the opposing destroyers, and that's going to give the Benham a lot more flexibility. Now, Shari does avoid here a fairly significant chance to take a lot of damage from the opposing Musashi, which is way over on the one line. So did avoid some fairly serious damage and is going to peel off here and try to get into a position where he can fire from some concealment. He doesn't want to put himself into a crossfire. We have the Scharnhorst that's to the west-northwest. We have the Musashi and the York that are pushing over due west. There is the Otago that's on the south side of Alpha that can put fire in. And then also there's the King George that was on the Juliet line that we haven't seen for a while. And so this is a situation that could be quite dangerous for any ship that's front and center, like the Buffalo, which has unfortunately put himself front and center and is now in a crossfire between at least 4 ships. And that's not going to bode well for him. You see some torpedoes from the Scharnhorst that have been sent. Oh, we've just detected the King George, and he's very healthy. So yeah, things are not looking very good. The Allies are still working with a one-ship deficit. And unfortunately, the torpedoes do take out the Buffalo. So now the opponents have a 2-ship advantage. Again, like I said, things are not looking very good. Now, the Cheshire, I should call out here, this is a ship that we don't see very often, or at least I don't, in games. This is a premium cruiser that was offered Is the Musashi firing HE against the Scharnhorst? It sure looks like it. In any case, the Cheshire is a premium ship that was offered as part of the Royal Navy Heavy Cruiser event earlier in 2020. This is a it only has 6 rifles, but its party trick is that it uses the same guns as are on the Drake and the Goliath. These are 234 millimeter guns, so they are very, very, very high HE alpha. Very good penetration. Nice. The Benham does finish off the Scharnhorst. That's narrowed the ship deficit to 1. Although the Allies are still down a few points, if everybody stays alive, they will get the lead on the opponents here in a couple of minutes. Shari is taking a chance here to fire on the King George, but he's going to slip back. Yeah, he does slip back into some cover and keeps the King George between himself or keep the island between himself and the King George, so he stays in concealment. The Allied Musashi is peeling away due north. I don't know why. He could just be going bow in and try to tank some of this damage and try to position next to an island so that he doesn't take crossfire from the King George, but he's elected to sail away, which is not helping either the Benham or Showery here. So again, Shari's he's just been detected again. Which ship is detecting him? Oh, it's the Atago. Atago is now fired on him. In fact, he's being targeted. Or he is being targeted now by 2. The other ship could either be the King George or the Musashi. He's just outside the range of the York, or at least he's very close to being outside that range. So he's probably going to try to reposition here again, try to use the terrain. The Musashi goes down to fires. So he too cannot tolerate the damage that was being poured on him by the opponents that are over on the west side of the map. Now we've been left with just Shari in the Cheshire and the Benham, and this is where we get to sort of the theme of this video is the coordination of these two. Very nice. The Benham kills the Atago. This is the coordination that we get between these two ships to try to salvage this game. The Allies have now just barely taken the lead. So between securing and maintaining control on 2 caps and narrowing the ship deficit, they've been able to get a lead, and Shari is going to reposition again so that he can fire from concealment. Now, this is a very good practice to follow as a cruiser player, is that if you are in a situation where they obviously cannot see the Benham, and if Shari were to open up here and make himself detected, he would be the only target that the 3 opponents have to fire on. So Shari is doing the right thing by repositioning in a way that he can fire from concealment and allow the Benham to spot for him, which is exactly what the Benham is doing. The Benham is obviously using his very prodigious torpedo capabilities to try to deny area and get hits where he can, but he is also offering some very crucial spotting for the Allies. Now the Benham's gotten a tad close to the King George, so it looks like he's going to peel back toward the east side of the cap. That last salvo was a little bit disappointing on the York. Oh, the York takes another torpedo. So this Benham is definitely pulling his weight. He has evened up the ship count. So now it's a very healthy Musashi and a very healthy King George against Shari and the Benham. Now the Benham is doing one other thing here. This is again a reflection of very good teamwork here. Is the Benham has called out that he is going to drop smoke, and this will allow Shari to back up a little more, not be blocked by this island with gunfire, or allow his gunfire to pass over the island, I should say, and he will be able to remain in concealment. So again, yeah, you can see that his some of his shells, or at least his forward guns, are being blocked by the island, but the smoke is going to provide Shari with cover so that he can back up more and gets shells out. Now this is U.S. Navy destroyer smoke, which is very long lasting. Those torpedoes look really good on the Musashi, but the Musashi obviously has basically the best torpedo protection in the game, and you can see just how little damage he actually took from those 2 torpedoes. Now the alpha on the Benham torpedoes is 15,200, I believe, so they're not as good as, let's say, like the Fletcher, which is one of the other tier 9 U.S. Navy destroyers, but because of the very high volume of torpedoes it can put out, getting a lot of hits is not too difficult. Now we can see that Bravo's being contested, so we know the King George has moved into the cap. Obviously, the Benham, having dropped smoke, is denying visibility on the King George, but Shari pops his hydro, and he has now detected the King George. See more torpedoes going in the direction of the King George. Ooh, nice. A fire on the Musashi. Now, the obviously with Shari not being in the smoke screen, he doesn't know how much longer the smoke is going to last. Now, the U.S. Navy destroyer smoke, or at least most of the destroyers, drop smoke that lasts close to 2 minutes at these upper tiers. So this should still be up for a little while longer, waiting for the King George to come across, and now he sends his torpedoes as well. Those torpedoes from the Benham look like they're going to get there first. Yes, he does get King George. Not quite enough to kill him. Shari elects to fire instead of letting his torpedoes finish him, and now he's going to duck back into cover because he doesn't want the Musashi to have a shot on him in case the smoke expired. The one thing that I thought was kind of interesting is Shari, I think he panicked a little bit and ran into the island. But with that kill on the King George, even though the opponents did take Bravo, that gives the Allies a big enough point lead that even if one of these two ships, the Benham or Shari, were to go down, they would still win the match, as there are only 20 seconds remaining, and they've built a well more than 200-point lead. So a very, very impressive comeback and an excellent display of teamwork. To Shari's credit, he did reach out to the Benham player immediately after this match, seeking the replay from the Benham to see if we could do a multiplayer perspective replay. Unfortunately, we did not get the replay from the Benham, but it is still a very, very good outing. So almost 104,000 in damage, a couple of kills by Shari in a very strong supporting role. And then with the team score, the Benham, unsurprisingly with his Kraken Unleashed and high caliber, comes in top XP for the team, but Shari comes in a very respective second position. So very well done, Shari. Thank you very much for sharing this with us. And again, I hope everybody did enjoy the replay and the commentary. Please do leave your comments below. And as always, we hope to see you out there on the virtual seas, and we wish you happy sailing.